We're always told that a high IQ is like a golden ticket, right? The key that's supposed to unlock this amazing life of success and recognition. But what if that's not the real story? What if, for some people, that golden ticket is actually the heaviest burden you could possibly imagine?
So, let's just ask the question that flips everything we think we know on its head. What if being a genius is actually a liability?
When you picture a genius, this is probably what comes to mind. We see the brilliant mind, effortlessly solving these incredibly complex problems, coming up with innovations and just leading the charge.
But there's a side we almost never see, a hidden cost. Behind that brilliant mind is often a hyperreactive body, a nervous system so overstimulated that it is quite literally breaking down from the constant stress.
And this right here, this lays out the brutal paradox. On one side, you've got the myth we all buy into, effortless success, everybody loves you, it's a gift from the heavens. But the reality, which is actually backed by a lot of research, is so much darker. It's chronic illness, profound isolation, and this overwhelming feeling that your gift is actually a curse.
So you got to ask, how is this even possible? Well, it all comes down to the very core of this paradox, a theory known as hyperbrain, hyperbody.
And look, this isn't just a hunch or a feeling people have. The data is, well, it's pretty shocking. A big survey of over 3,700 Mensa members, so we're talking people with IQs all above 130, found they have a dramatically higher risk for mood and anxiety disorders, ADHD, and even things like autoimmune disorders. The numbers just prove it. There is a real, measurable physical and psychological price to pay.
And the hyperbrain, hyperbody theory explains why. The idea is that this supercharged brain isn't just living in the body like a passenger. No, it creates an overreactive hyperbody. It puts the central nervous system on constant high alert, which in turn makes it incredibly vulnerable to, well, almost everything.
To make this super concrete, think about this. For a system this sensitive, a tiny stimulus that most people wouldn't even register, like a scratchy tag on a shirt or a weird sound in the room, can be enough to trigger a low-level but chronic fight-or-flight response. Now just imagine living in that state of alert, constantly.
This incredible intensity, it isn't just a reaction to the outside world. It's literally hardwired into the brain's operating system. It creates what some researchers call a brain on fire, which brings us to a really fascinating concept, the 5 overexcitabilities.
Okay, so this idea comes from a psychiatrist named Kazimierz Dabrowski, and it is crucial to understanding this. He identified 5 different channels through which these minds experience the world, and they are all dialed up to 11. You've got intellectual, which is just this bottomless curiosity. Imaginational, which means vivid fantasies but also terrifying fears. Emotional, an incredible depth of feeling. Sensual, where all your senses are heightened, and psychomotor, which is just this relentless physical energy. It's like experiencing life through 5 giant amplifiers, all at once. Now, living with that constant internal intensity creates yet another huge problem. It's what happens when different parts of you are completely and totally out of sync. Kind of like having a race car engine, but the brakes from a kid's bicycle.
The technical term for this is asynchronous development, and it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's a state where a person's brain power, their emotional maturity, and their social skills are all growing at wildly different speeds. That Formula One engine with bicycle brakes analogy, it's spot on. You've got all this power, but the system to control it just can't keep up.
So, what does this actually look like in real life? Well, you might have a 5-year-old who has the cognitive ability of a 10-year-old, but they still have the emotional control of, well, a 5-year-old. Or maybe a 14-year-old who can debate philosophy like a college student, but has the social awareness of someone much younger. You can see how this mismatch would create all kinds of friction, both inside and out.
And that internal friction, that chaos, it never stays contained. It inevitably spills out into the external world, and that's where it creates what we'll call the isolation barrier, the feeling of being completely alone, even in a crowded room.
And the core of this barrier, the reason it exists, can be boiled down to a single, pretty stark number: 30. 30 IQ points.
This is the foundation of the IQ communication barrier theory. It basically says that once the gap in IQ between two people gets bigger than about 30 points, meaningful communication just breaks. And let's be super clear, this has nothing to do with using big words. It's about a fundamental difference in how their brains process reality. They're running on incompatible conceptual chains of logic. It's like trying to run Mac software on a Windows PC.
Now, to survive in a world where you can't easily connect, people develop strategies. But it is so important to understand the difference here. There's code switching, which is a low-effort tool you use just to make sure you're understood. But then there's masking. And masking is something else entirely. It's a heavy, high-cost survival shield you wear to avoid being rejected or even abused. And the price is absolute, total exhaustion.
And wearing that mask day after day, year after year, it has a devastating cost. It leads to chronic emotional exhaustion, a kind of burnout that looks so much like depression it's often misdiagnosed. Over time, you can completely lose your sense of who you really are, and you're left with this constant nagging feeling that you're an alien just pretending to be human.
So you add all of these pressures together, the hyperreactive body, the out-of-sync self, the profound isolation, and it all builds and builds until it reaches a breaking point, the crisis point. The real question is it a breakdown or a breakthrough?
This quote really just says it all. The cumulative weight of a hyperreactive body, a mind that cannot rest, and the profound isolation of being misunderstood often leads to a dark night of the soul, existential depression. And it's so important to get this. This isn't a personal failure. It's the logical, almost inevitable endpoint of being in an impossible situation.
But what if that breakdown, that dark night of the soul, isn't the end of the story? What if it's actually the beginning? This leads us to a really powerful concept called positive disintegration.
Remember Dabrowski, the guy who gave us the overexcitabilities? He argued that this intense psychological crisis, this falling apart, isn't a tragedy. He said it's a necessary catalyst. It's a painful, for sure, but absolutely essential process of letting the old structures crumble so you can evolve into a stronger, more authentic, self-directed person. In other words, the breakdown is the breakthrough.
And that idea, it reframes the entire problem, doesn't it? It means the solution isn't to fix yourself, to try and slow down that powerful engine or dull your senses. No way. The solution isn't to fix the engine. It's to find the right racetrack for it to run on.
And that leaves us with one final and I think crucial question. It's not just for the gifted, it's really for all of us. The goal shouldn't be to figure out how to fit in, but where you fit in. So, the real question is, where is the intellectual tribe that lets you finally take off the mask?